Recognizing toxic patterns early is one of the most underrated skills a person can develop, because most people notice the damage only when they are already deep inside it. And by then, the energy is drained, the confidence is shaken, and the peace is disturbed. But the truth is, the signs are always there. The patterns are visible long before the consequences appear. The real problem is not that people can't see them, but that they have trained themselves to ignore what is uncomfortable, hoping it will change on its own. But nothing changes on its own. Not a person, not a pattern, not a behavior that has already rooted itself deep within someone's character. So the first step, the first true act of protecting yourself, is learning to observe people with clarity, without fantasies, without excuses, without trying to rewrite what is right in front of you. When you pay attention, you start noticing how toxic energy always reveals itself in subtle moments. It appears in the way someone speaks to you with a tone that lowers your spirit, the way someone dismisses your feelings, the way someone twists your words into something that benefits them. These are the quiet moments where the truth whispers. But when people crave acceptance, validation, or belonging, they silence that whisper. They pretend that the discomfort is temporary. They convince themselves that the disrespect is unintentional. They rewrite the story in their mind to make it more bearable. But the reality is simple. When someone shows you who they are in the small moments, they're preparing you for who they will be in the big ones. This is why recognition is power. When you train yourself to observe, not with judgment but with awareness, you notice patterns instead of single incidents. You begin to see that a person who constantly criticizes others will eventually criticize you. A person who thrives on chaos will eventually bring chaos to your life. A person who manipulates someone else's emotions will eventually manipulate yours. The pattern doesn't change just because they change the target. It only changes when you refuse to participate. Some people mistake early recognition for negativity. They think that being cautious means being untrusting. But awareness is not negativity. Awareness is intelligence. Awareness is your internal system for self-protection. It is the ability to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. And the more aware you become, the more you realize that toxic behavior is not always loud. It's not always physically harmful. Sometimes it's a slow erosion of your inner peace, a constant pressure on your mind, a recurring doubt that appears every time you spend time with a certain person, a feeling that you have to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. These experiences are patterns, and when you learn to read them, you no longer need the situation to explode before you react. You can take action early, calmly, and with strength. One of the most dangerous toxic behaviors is subtle manipulation. It can come disguised as concern. It can come disguised as advice. It can even come disguised as love. But manipulation always has one intention: control. Control over your emotions, your actions, your decisions, your confidence. And the moment you feel that someone benefits when you doubt yourself, you have already seen the pattern you need to see. A healthy person wants you to grow. A toxic person wants you to stay exactly where they can manage you. Another common sign appears when someone never accepts responsibility. They blame circumstances, people, timing, stress, anything except themselves. And in the beginning, you forgive it. You think they're just having a hard day. You think maybe they're misunderstood. But over time, you realize that they are experts at escaping accountability. They have mastered the art of turning every situation into someone else's fault. And if you remain close to them, eventually the person they blame will be you. Toxicity also reveals itself in how someone reacts to your success. Pay attention to this. Some people celebrate you only when you're beneath them. The moment you rise, the moment you grow, the moment you gain strength, suddenly their tone shifts, their support disappears, their attitude cools, their words become sharper. A secure person is proud of you. An insecure person is threatened by you. And insecurity is one of the core foundations of toxic behavior. You will also notice that toxic people thrive in confusion. They want you uncertain. They want you second-guessing. They want you emotionally unstable. When you feel emotionally unstable, you are easier to influence, and they understand this. So they create situations that make you question your reality. They twist conversations to make you doubt your memory. They shift the narrative to make you feel guilty for things you never did. They distort the truth until you're unsure whether you're being too sensitive or whether they're actually being unfair. This mental fog is intentional, even if they are not consciously aware of doing it. It is still a pattern, and you must learn to recognize the difference between clarity and confusion. Pay attention to the way someone behaves when you set a small boundary. A toxic person reacts with irritation, anger, guilt-tripping, or emotional withdrawal. They see your boundary as a threat, not as a healthy expression of self-respect. They interpret your no as disrespect. They interpret your needs as inconvenience. And this is one of the earliest and clearest signs that this person is not safe for your peace. Another sign is inconsistency. A person who is one way today and another tomorrow cannot be trusted with your emotional well-being, when their affection depends on their mood, when their respect depends on what you can offer them, when their behavior shifts without warning. You will eventually find yourself walking on eggshells. And once you start walking on eggshells, you are no longer living your truth. You are surviving their instability. Recognizing these patterns early does not require confrontation. It does not require drama. It does not require arguments. It requires observation, stillness, awareness. When you observe instead of react, people reveal their character without you needing to do anything. And once someone has shown their character clearly, you no longer need explanations from them. You no longer need apologies. You no longer need promises. You already know who they are. What often keeps people stuck is hope. Hope that the other person will change. Hope that the situation will improve. Hope that love, patience, or time will fix the problem. But hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a boundary. Hope does not protect you from emotional harm. And the dangerous thing about hoping for change is that it makes you ignore the present reality. The present reality is the truth. The future you imagine is a story. And many people suffer not because the toxic person is too powerful, but because they hold on to the story longer than they hold on to their self-respect. When you recognize toxic patterns early, you give yourself the gift of choice. You can choose distance before the damage is severe. You can choose silence before the conflict becomes loud. You can choose calm before the stress builds. You can choose peace before chaos takes over. You regain control of your energy. You regain control of your time. You regain control of your emotional space. Recognition brings freedom because you stop personalizing the behavior. You stop wondering, what did I do wrong? And start understanding, this is who they are. You stop thinking, maybe I'm the problem, and start seeing, this doesn't align with who I want to be. You detach your worth from their treatment. That is power. And the more you practice awareness, the stronger your intuition becomes. Your intuition is not mystical. It is your accumulated wisdom speaking to you. It is your past experiences whispering guidance. It is your inner self saying, this pattern looks familiar, be careful. And when you learn to trust that voice, you stop repeating the same painful lessons. The smartest way to deal with toxic people begins long before you take action. It begins with recognizing what is happening as early as possible. When you train yourself to identify the signs without emotion, you become untouchable. You no longer invite toxic people into your life. You no longer tolerate what drains your soul. You no longer negotiate your self-worth. Detachment is not about becoming cold, emotionless, or distant from the world. It is not about pushing people away, and it is not about pretending you don't feel anything. Detachment is an inner discipline, a quiet strength that allows you to protect your peace without needing to fight for it. It is the understanding that not everything requires your reaction. Not every situation deserves your emotional investment, and not every person should have access to your mental space. When you develop the ability to detach, you stop allowing toxic people to dictate your mood, your thoughts, and your direction. And this becomes one of the smartest ways to deal with them, without shouting, without conflict, and without losing your center. Most people believe that power comes from confrontation. They think strength is shown through arguing back, proving a point, defending themselves constantly. But this belief drains the spirit faster than anything. Because when you enter an argument with someone who thrives on chaos, you have already lost control. You are playing their game. You are stepping into their energy. You are letting them decide the tone, the pace, and the emotional intensity of your experience. Detachment means you refuse to play. You choose your inner stability over the temporary satisfaction of reacting. When you detach, you don't ignore what is happening. You see everything clearly. You hear every word. You notice every behavior. But you choose not to let it enter your emotional space. It's the difference between standing in the rain and watching the rain through a window. The rain is still there, but you are not getting soaked. Toxic people want to pull you into the storm. They want you emotional, reactive, unstable. Because when you are emotional, they can manipulate you. When you are reactive, they can provoke you. When you are unstable, they can control the narrative. Detachment denies them this power. People misunderstand detachment because they think it is passive. But detachment is extremely active. It is a deliberate choice you make in every moment of tension. It is the discipline of holding your center when someone tries to pull you off balance. It is the strength of breathing deeply when someone pushes your buttons. It is the wisdom of walking away from a battle that does not deserve your energy. Detachment is the art of not allowing emotional thieves to steal from you. One of the first steps toward developing detachment is learning to pause. That small moment between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Most people react instantly, habitually, without awareness. They hear an insult and they answer. They hear a criticism and they defend. They feel provoked and they attack back. But when you learn to pause, even for 2 seconds, everything changes. In those 2 seconds, you reclaim your mind. You break the automatic chain that toxic people rely on. You choose how to respond, not based on emotion, but based on clarity. Toxic people hate your pause. Because your pause means you are thinking. Your pause means you are conscious. Your pause means they can no longer control your emotional state. And once you maintain that inner space long enough, they begin losing interest in manipulating you. You become less entertaining to their chaos. You stop giving them what they seek, your emotional reaction. Another aspect of detachment is not personalizing someone else's behavior. The moment you take their words as truth, their insults as identity, their actions as your fault, you give them access to your inner world. But detachment teaches you something important. What people say or do is a reflection of them, not you. Their anger is their unresolved pain. Their disrespect is their insecurity. Their manipulation is their fear of losing control. Their criticism is their lack of self-worth. When you internalize this, their behavior stops cutting so deeply. You see it as information, not as injury. Its clarity frees you, because you realize you don't need to convince them, change them, or fix them. You simply adjust your distance. Detachment also means accepting that not everyone will understand you. Some people will misinterpret your silence. Some will mistake your calmness for weakness. Some will feel threatened because they cannot provoke you anymore. And that is fine. Detachment is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about staying loyal to your inner peace. Let people misunderstand if they want to. Their confusion is not your responsibility. Many people struggle with detachment because they feel guilty. They think that stepping back means abandoning someone. They think saying less means they don't care. But detachment is not about abandoning others. It's about not abandoning yourself. It's about preserving your clarity so you can make the right choices. It's about refusing to drown just because someone else refuses to swim. It's about honoring your boundaries and your emotional limits. A detached mind responds without ego. It listens without absorbing. It observes without falling into the drama. When someone tries to bait you with negative comments, a detached mind sees the intention behind the words. It sees the attempt to trigger you. It sees the emotional immaturity. A reactive mind takes the words personally. A detached mind sees the pattern and remains unmoved. Not cold, just centered. With detachment, you begin to understand that silence is not empty, it is full of answers. Your silence can be a mirror, reflecting someone's behavior back at them. When you stop explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, your silence becomes your boundary. When you stop defending yourself to someone who twists your words, your silence becomes your shield. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategic. Silence is clarity. Silence prevents you from saying things you will regret, and it prevents toxic people from dragging you into arguments they have already rehearsed in their mind. You learn that sometimes the smartest answer is no answer. Not because you are powerless, but because you are powerful enough to choose peace over ego. Detachment also gives you the ability to walk away without emotional drama. Walking away is one of the hardest things for many people because they attach their identity to relationships, friendships, or situations. They feel that distancing themselves means they have failed, but walking away is not failure. Walking away is maturity. Walking away is wisdom. Walking away is the recognition that your energy is too valuable to be wasted in places where it is not respected. And when the heart is detached, walking away becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. The more you practice detachment, the more you learn to protect your energy without closing your heart. You remain kind, but not naive. You remain open, but not exposed. You remain compassionate, but not available for emotional manipulation. You learn to care deeply without allowing that care to destroy your peace. This balance is what makes detachment powerful. There is a moment in everyone's life when they realize they don't need to fight every battle. They don't need to respond to every insult. They don't need to correct every lie. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth. This moment is where detachment begins. And from that moment on, life becomes lighter, simpler, more meaningful. When you detach from toxic people, you also detach from the illusion that you owe them your attention. You don't owe anyone access to your mind. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your peace. You don't owe anyone the energy that they waste. Your time is limited. Your spirit is precious. Your peace is sacred. And toxic people have no right to any of it. There is strength in knowing when to step back. There is wisdom in knowing when to say nothing. There is power in knowing when not to react. And there is freedom in knowing that your emotional world belongs to you, not to the people who try to shake it. Detachment lets you choose your battles. It lets you stay in control. It lets you remain grounded even when others are trying to pull you into their storm. And it reminds you that walking away from what drains you is not a loss, it is a victory. Most people go through life reacting to everything around them, and they don't even realize how much control they have handed over to others. They let words push them. They let emotions pull them. They let situations dictate the rhythm of their mind. But reacting is the easiest thing in the world. Every person with a heartbeat can react. What takes strength, what requires discipline, what separates a calm mind from a chaotic one, is the ability to respond instead of react. And when you learn this, you become unshakable in front of toxic people, because they depend on your reaction to maintain their power. Think about how many conflicts, arguments, and emotional explosions could have been avoided if there was just a moment of silence before reacting. That one moment, that breath, that pause, is the difference between peace and chaos. Toxic people want speed. They want you to respond instantly. They want you to jump into the fire without thinking. They want you emotional, because emotion makes you predictable. When you are emotional, you operate from old wounds, from insecurity, from fear, from ego. They can manipulate that, they can twist that, they can use that. But when you respond instead of react, you break the entire chain they rely on. You refuse to give them the fuel they need. Suddenly their insults fall flat, their aggression feels weak, their manipulation loses grip. They can't figure out how to reach you anymore because your peace is not for sale and your emotions are not a toy. Responding is not about being passive. It's not about being silent forever. It's not about tolerating disrespect. Responding means choosing intention over impulse. It means controlling yourself instead of letting someone else control you. It means acting from clarity, not from chaos. When someone tries to provoke you and you react instantly, you become part of their game. You get pulled into their emotional field. You start fighting battles that don't belong to you. You start defending yourself against accusations that don't deserve a response. You start wasting energy on situations that don't matter. But responding gives you space. You observe. You breathe. You decide what the moment truly deserves. And most of the time, the moment doesn't deserve anything at all. One of the strongest things you can do is stay calm when someone expects you to explode. Calmness is a superpower. It confuses people who thrive on drama. It frustrates people who want chaos. It silences people who want you to lose control. Because the moment you stay steady, the moment you hold your center, their influence collapses. Everyone has triggers. Everyone has wounds. Everyone has old memories that rise when someone hits the right emotional button. Toxic people are experts at finding those buttons. They know what to say to irritate you. They know what to mention to make you defensive. They know what tone to use to make you feel disrespected. And when those triggers appear, reacting is easy. It feels natural. It feels justified. But reacting is also how you lose power. Because the moment you let someone control your triggers, you are no longer leading your life. They are. Responding means you recognize the trigger, but you refuse to let it control the moment. You see the wound, but you choose healing over reaction. You feel the rise of anger, but you choose to remain centered. You sense the disrespect, but you decide that your peace is more valuable than proving a point. When you respond, you are not avoiding the situation. You are mastering the situation. You are operating from strength, not weakness. And that strength creates a psychological boundary that toxic people cannot cross. They realize you cannot be easily manipulated. You cannot be provoked. You cannot be emotionally hijacked. And once they realize this, their influence begins to disappear. Responding also requires emotional maturity. It means understanding that your reaction is a reflection of you, not of the other person. How someone behaves reveals their character. How you respond reveals yours. And when your response is controlled, intentional, and steady, you prove to yourself, not to them, that you are in charge of your inner world. You don't need to respond with anger when someone is angry. You don't need to respond with disrespect when someone is disrespectful. You don't need to mirror the darkness of someone else just because they stepped into your light. That is what reacting does. It makes you become like the person you're dealing with. Responding lets you stay true to who you are. There will always be moments when people try to push you. They will try to provoke a reaction just to feel powerful. They will poke at your insecurities. They will make sarcastic comments. They will use guilt. They will use silence. They will use emotion. They will use whatever they can to get a response out of you. But the moment you recognize that their behavior has nothing to do with your worth, your value, or your truth, you stop being bothered by it. The most powerful response is clarity. And clarity comes from observation, not reaction. When someone speaks to you in a tone designed to hurt you, don't react, observe. When someone lies to get a reaction, don't react, observe. When someone tries to start an argument, don't react, observe. Suddenly, you begin to see patterns. You begin to see the real motives. You begin to see the insecurity behind the behavior. And when you see clearly, you respond with wisdom instead of emotion. Responding gives you time to think. Thinking gives you power. Power gives you freedom. And freedom allows you to walk through life without constantly being pulled into the emotional storms of others. Sometimes the smartest response is a gentle one. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is distance. Sometimes it is a short sentence that ends the entire situation. You don't always need long explanations. You don't always need to justify yourself. You don't always need to prove you are right. Responding is about choosing the response that aligns with your peace, not with the other person's expectations. Toxic people depend on your emotional involvement. They depend on your desire to fix things. They depend on your need to be understood. They depend on your habit of explaining yourself. If you stop giving them these reactions, their strategies collapse. They cannot manipulate a person who does not react. They cannot control a person who pauses. They cannot influence a person who responds with wisdom. Responding makes you unpredictable to toxic people. They cannot read you. They cannot anticipate your reaction. They cannot plan their behavior around your emotions. This unpredictability becomes your shield, because toxic people lose interest when they cannot control the outcome. You will notice how arguments dissolve when you stop trying to win them. You will notice how conflicts lose heat when you refuse to match someone's intensity. You will notice how people reveal their authentic selves when you allow silence to fill the space instead of jumping to react. You will notice how your stress drops, your clarity rises, and your energy expands when you stop carrying the emotional baggage of every situation. Responding also teaches you emotional resilience. You learn to remain centered even in moments of pressure. You learn to stay grounded even when emotions are high. You learn to stay aware even when someone tries to manipulate your perception. Emotional resilience does not mean you don't feel anything. It means you don't allow your feelings to control you. It means you feel deeply, but you act wisely. You experience emotions, but you don't drown in them. You understand what you feel, but you don't allow those feelings to guide you blindly. The more you practice responding, the more natural it becomes. You begin to feel a calm distance between yourself and the world around you. You hear words without absorbing them. You experience situations without losing yourself in them. You interact with people without letting their energy invade your mind. This calm distance is the foundation of emotional control. Emotional control is the foundation of inner strength. And inner strength is what protects you from toxic people. Responding also helps you maintain dignity. Arguments often take away your dignity because they pull you into lower forms of behavior. But responding keeps you above it. You remain composed. You remain focused. You remain aligned with your values. You don't become the person you're trying to protect yourself from. This is why responding is one of the smartest tools for dealing with toxic people. You don't need aggression. You don't need anger. You don't need revenge. You need awareness. You need discipline. You need patience. You need clarity. When your clarity is stronger than their chaos, you win without fighting. Setting firm boundaries is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect, yet it is also the area where most people struggle the most. Not because they don't understand what boundaries are, but because they fear the consequences of enforcing them. They fear losing people. They fear being judged. They fear being misunderstood. They fear appearing cold or selfish. But the truth is, boundaries don't push away the right people. They push away the wrong ones. Boundaries don't create distance from love. They create distance from disrespect. And once you understand this, you begin to realize that boundaries aren't walls, they are doors. You decide who enters, how long they stay, and how close they are allowed to come to your peace. Most toxic people don't appear toxic in the beginning. They test you in small ways. They push just a little. They cross a line just once to see how you react. They make a small, disrespectful comment just to observe your response. And if you let it slide, they learn that it's safe to keep going. Boundaries must be set early because every small violation you ignore becomes an invitation for a larger one. When you tolerate what hurts you, you teach others that their comfort is more important than your peace. But boundaries require courage because we live in a world where too many people are afraid of disappointing others. They would rather disappoint themselves. They give and give until they burn out. They allow access to their time, their energy, and their heart without considering whether the other person has earned that access. And when someone finally crosses the line in a way that is undeniable, they look back and realize they trained that person through silence, through softness, through fear, through approval seeking. Boundaries break this pattern. They tell the world, my peace matters, my dignity matters, my energy matters, I matter. A boundary is not an argument. It is not a lecture. It is not an emotional speech. A boundary is a simple line, expressed calmly and clearly. But even more important than speaking a boundary is enforcing it. Toxic people don't care about the words you say, they care about the access you give. They care about the reaction you show. They care about the tolerance you display. If your words say no, but your actions say yes, they will always follow your actions. Setting boundaries with toxic people will often trigger their discomfort. They will test you again. They will try to find the old version of you, the version that tolerated everything. They will push, guilt trip, manipulate, or act like the victim because they want you to feel responsible for their emotions. But their emotions are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your peace, your mental clarity, your emotional health. When you protect that, you are doing the right thing even if others try to make you feel wrong for it. Some people will say you've changed. Some people will say you've become distant. Some will accuse you of being difficult. But these same people benefited from your lack of boundaries before. They enjoyed the version of you that always agreed. They liked the version of you that always said yes. They benefited from your silence, your sacrifices, your flexibility. Now that you've chosen yourself, they feel threatened. But choosing yourself is not selfish, it is survival. When you set boundaries, you are not attacking anyone. You are simply stating how you expect to be treated. You are defining what is acceptable and what is not. You are creating a structure that allows you to stay grounded and whole. And anyone who respects you will respect your boundaries too. People who genuinely care about you will not be offended when you set limits. They will appreciate your clarity. They will understand that boundaries make relationships healthier, stronger, and more honest. Boundaries also protect you from becoming emotionally entangled in situations that don't belong to you. Toxic people love dragging others into their storms. They want you to feel responsible for fixing them. They want you to feel guilty for not helping them. They want you to solve problems they created. They want you to carry emotional weight that is not yours to carry. But a boundary says, your storm is not my home. A boundary says, your chaos is not my responsibility. A boundary says, I can care about you without sacrificing myself. One of the most important boundaries is your time. Time is your most valuable resource. You will never get it back. When you allow someone to waste your time, you are giving away pieces of your life. Toxic people waste time effortlessly. They bring drama, confusion, arguments, emotional games, and circular conversations that go nowhere. They will take hours of your day and leave you feeling drained, empty, and unsettled. But when you protect your time, you protect your life. You decide where your energy goes. You decide who deserves it. You decide who does not. Another important boundary is your emotional availability. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves the privilege of knowing your inner world. Not everyone is safe enough for you to be vulnerable with. Toxic people use your emotions against you. They twist your vulnerability. They weaponize your honesty. They manipulate your empathy. They guilt-trip your kindness. You must learn to be emotionally generous with the right people and emotionally disciplined with the wrong ones. Some people won't like your emotional boundaries because they want you open so they can enter whenever they want. They want easy access to your energy. They want you available on demand. But you are not a public place. You are not a resource to be used. You are not a tool to be activated whenever someone feels lonely or bored. You are a human being with emotional limits, and protecting those limits is not optional. It is necessary. Boundaries also involve saying no without apology. The word no is a complete sentence. It does not require justification. It does not require permission. It does not require explanation. The people who get angry when you say no are the same people who are benefiting from you saying yes. Saying no allows you to maintain inner balance. It allows you to protect your capacity. It allows you to stay aligned with your values. You must also learn the boundary of distance. You don't have to cut everyone off completely to protect your peace. Sometimes distance is enough. Distance softens emotional intensity. Distance reduces dependency. Distance reveals truth. Distance allows you to see clearly who respects you and who only respects your proximity. And distance is sometimes the most powerful boundary because you're not fighting, you're not arguing, you're not explaining, you're simply choosing space. Not all boundaries need to be spoken. Some are silent, some are simply lived. When people show you who they are, your behavior toward them becomes the boundary. You stop sharing everything. You stop giving unlimited access. You stop responding instantly. You stop pouring energy into a one-sided relationship. You stop reopening doors that should remain closed. This silent boundary speaks louder than any sentence you could ever say. Boundaries are the language of self-worth. When you set them, you declare to yourself and to the world that your peace is not negotiable. You are not afraid to walk away. You are not afraid to lose someone who disrespects your limits. You are not afraid of being misunderstood. You are not afraid of being alone for a moment. You are not afraid to protect yourself. Many people fail to set boundaries because they fear losing love. But love without respect is not love. Support without honesty is not support. Kindness without limits is not kindness. It is self-sacrifice. And a person who loves you will never ask you to sacrifice your peace for their comfort. They will adjust, they will communicate, they will honor your lines. They will grow with you, not against you. Boundaries are also the antidote to manipulation. When someone tries to guilt you, your boundary says, I do not accept guilt that is not mine. When someone tries to control you, your boundary says, I decide what I give. When someone tries to twist your words, your boundary says, my truth is not up for negotiation. When someone tries to disrespect you, your boundary says, you no longer have access to me in this way. Every time you enforce a boundary, you are telling yourself that you matter. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, people will learn that you are not someone who tolerates chaos. You are not someone who accepts disrespect. You are not someone who allows emotional harm. You become someone whose presence requires respect, whose energy requires sincerity, and whose life requires peace. Your boundaries teach others how to treat you, and when you commit to them with consistency, you rise above the behavior of toxic people. You stop playing their games. You stop becoming entangled in their drama. You stop being emotionally available to their negativity. You step back into your power.